Alrighty, g'day guys and welcome to the Bradley J. Driver experience. Well, today's episode is very special at that. I remember it was probably about a month and a half ago I announced today's guest was coming on, and my Instagram DMs, my messages, my phone blew up for days because there were so many people that wanted to hear what happens behind the scenes with this man, what he's doing. You've done so much already. We're talking a man who's come from racing royalty. He is a thoroughbred at that, and he's done so much within not just the industry of horse racing, but also business. And we're going to cover all of that today. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Mr. Tom Waterhouse. How are you, brother?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Brad, for having me on board.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure. We're excited. We're here at your office, which if you're watching the video, I'm sure you'll be able to see in the rocks. Beautiful building.
Yeah, no, really. I live with, got 3 kids, and my wife, we live near the zoo. And so to be in the rocks is great because you just sort of come off the bridge and really easy to get to and get home. And yeah, it's a great area. Really nice.
Awesome. What I've done is I've observed, I've been watching from far away these past few months just to see your characteristics and see how I wanted to take this podcast and what we wanted to talk about. And there's one thing that I kept noticing. It was almost like something that was subtle in every bit of your videos and your marketing. And so I've come bearing gifts today. I bought you a nice... We couldn't get a can or a bottle, but we bought you a nice 1.25 of the Fanta.
Thank you very much.
And I thought it would be a nice way to kick off
the
podcast with a little bit of fun. It's something I noticed in every video when one of those best bets gets up or you guys have a successful day in the office. It's quite often a can of Fanta Crack. So talk to me. What's that about?
So my grandfather, who was a tremendous, both a grandfather and also as a partner in business and a mentor, he used to have the worst diet. So he would eat hot dogs or sausage rolls and ice creams and Fanta every day and never drank water. He used to say, "Oh, water, that'll make you rust." And so he drank Fanta after Fanta, and we had it in one of our last ads he appeared in, and he was drinking can after can of Fanta, and sort of people took notice of it, and so we've just kept it going, basically, just as a sort of tipping our hat to my grandfather.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I will get you to move a step closer to the mic
please.
too.
Yep.
It's funny, I'd done so much research on it because I kept searching on Google, Tom Waterhouse Fanta. What does Tom Waterhouse have to do with Fanta? And I come to the conclusion, I thought, I reckon it's got something to do with like a tip off to someone or like a nostalgic moment from your past or your childhood. That is a nice play on it. So there you go. It's good to know. So I'm so interested to hear about absolutely everything you're doing and everything you've done. The one thing that struck me throughout some of my research, and I listened to you on some of the other podcasts that you featured on, was your sort of introduction into horse racing. You obviously grew up in a family who have a rich history in the business and a pure love for it, but that wasn't always the case for you, was it?
No, my sister and I, we didn't like horse racing at all. My parents would always talk racing at the dinner table, and we were just like, this is so boring. Talk about something interesting. And it wasn't until I used to work for my mum when I was at school from the age of sort of 13, 14, at least a week every holiday and every Sunday. And I just hated getting up early in the morning and leading these big horses around and mucking out boxes. And I just remember my mum used to say, like, go to get a shovel to pick up the manure. She'd like, what are you doing? Pick it up with your hands. And like, she'd just be like, and I was like, how is this any good? I don't want to be getting up at 2:00 in the morning when all my friends are out and on Sundays rather than, I don't know, going to the footy or whatever, going to the stables. But it wasn't until basically my first year at university, my dad said, look, do you want to come and help out on a Saturday? And then I came to the betting ring and saw just the activity and the real buzz of people betting in such large numbers. And I went, this is incredible. How come I didn't know about this part of racing? And I fell in love with it and basically changed all my tutes and timetable around to be able to go to the races on Wednesdays and Thursdays and on Saturdays with my dad and then with my grandfather and just really fell in love with it and went from not wanting to talk about racing at all to wanting to talk about nothing else. And it was interesting. Now my mum always says, look, can your father and can you guys please stop talking odds and sods and horse racing? Can we talk about something more interesting?
It's funny because I've completely different background, but my family had no sort of connection to racing as, personalities or owners, but my family grew up loving horse racing. So I had very similar, where as a young guy, it was kind of every Saturday the races were on the telly. you'd hear the old boy blowing up because
Yeah.
the TAB couldn't hear what he was saying. The old Tabitha on the
Yeah,
phone couldn't hear what he was saying when he was trying to put on a bet. And we sort of grew up around it. And it wasn't until recently, I think it was about a year and a half ago, Dad bought a share on a horse.
Okay, great.
And
Terrific.
it's an emotional game. We went first race, we were excited, we were keen, and it ran dead last at Kembla. It had a terrible run.
Yeah.
And you're devastated.
It's a tough game.
And we just didn't know what to expect, but you always back your own horse. You always have faith in your own. And it was the next race at Newcastle that got up, and it paid, I think we got it boosted on one of the apps, and it ended up paying 71 to 1. And
Oh, how
Dad and I
good.
had the best afternoon of our life.
Yeah, it's
but it's a very emotional business, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so I'm obviously seen from my mum's side of racing with owners and her training horses. It's a very it's a hard game, but it's a great for people to get involved in. That it's very social. I know I was in a few horses with a bunch of mates, and it gave us something to chat about and go out and do together, and just the banter back and forth. It was a really nice social activity, and also if you can get a winner, which is hard, it's a lot of excitement as well, isn't it?
Definitely.
It's great.
Definitely. I heard you speaking about your grandfather obviously coming out of retirement to teach you the ins and outs. Talk to me about that experience. So obviously someone who, for you, is your granddad,
Yeah.
You see him as, the guy that you know and love, but to the racing world, he's a legend. What is it like to learn off a gentleman like that?
So both my grandfathers were amazing and terrific grandfathers, but my grandfather Bill, it was just so much fun. So I used to stay at their house most Saturday nights, and he'd feed me chocolates and ice cream for breakfast, and we'd go and try and shoot pigeons with a BB gun on a Sunday morning. I never got one, but I have this machine gun that he bought me that I try and shoot it, and we'd be running around and we'd play table tennis for hours and watch movies. He was a really fun grandfather and very loving and warm. And then I worked with my dad, who obviously is form genius, an amazing bookmaker, and learnt from him for the first 2 years. And he said to my grandfather, look, you should come out of retirement and teach Tom the art of bookmaking, spend some time with him and work together. And so my grandfather came out of retirement, and I saw a completely different person, because he was hard and tough and really just an enormous character. And I'd been taught with my dad how to be a bookie, and he's a form student and puts a lot of analysis in and wants to play the horse, rather than the man. My grandfather's just a big gambler, big picture. And so it was like oil and water. I didn't believe anything my grandfather was saying about how to bookmake, and I thought he'd gone senile and didn't want to listen to him. And we had these blazing arguments because he wanted to bet big and I just didn't want to lose. And so we fought, and it was really interesting, because I've been this loving relationship as grandfather, grandson, and to being sort of business partners of really at loggerheads, and that lasted for a few years, and I realised after that time that he was actually right about everything. But he was very different to my dad. They have two very unique, different styles, and it showed me that there's not just one way to have success. There's many different ways you can be successful. Bookmaking, there's very many different ways you can be unsuccessful, many different ways to be successful, and that those two ways that they looked at bookmaking, I sort of took bits from both and sort of formulated a way of involving my dad's form and analysis and my grandfather's big betting, big picture side of things, and hopefully got bits of both of them that have helped me get to where I am now, and hopefully in the future. But yeah, it was a great experience, and that closeness. I don't know if you found in your life, if you're prepared to have a very argumentative relationship and at loggerheads with someone, as long as there's that forgiving period, you actually become all very close, because it's a side of your emotion that I can't think of really anyone else in my life that I've had such blazing arguments with and that I'm close with. I don't argue like that with I've never argued like that with my dad or my wife or my sister or my mum. That sort of having that relationship brings you very close, and it was such a blessing to be able to work with both my grandfather and my dad, and I still work with my dad, and I call him 10 times a day, every day, but to have that relationship with my family and to be able to learn off both my dad and my grandfather, I've just been blessed and so lucky,
I'm a big family man too, so I respect that a lot. And one thing I picked up on that you said in there, you spoke about, your grandfather was a big gambler. He wanted to push hard, and you kind of just wanted to play it maybe a little bit safer in those early years. Stomaching loss it's hard to do. And I'm a bit of a movie buff, and I think about that line in Rocky where he says, it's not how hard you can get hit, but how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And there's a story from your early days with your grandfather where you met John Singleton.
Oh, yep.
And he placed a bet that at the time might have felt safe to you guys.
Yeah.
It was a bit of an uppercut in the guts.
Yeah, so we were a very small bookie. We're got the worst stand at the race course, and we were lucky to win a few $1,000s in the day. And John Singleton obviously used to bet with my dad and my grandfather back in the day. And I saw him coming onto the course, and I'm like, oh, there's John Singleton. He's got Beldershore. We didn't like the horse at all on the day. And I went over and I said, oh, Mr. Singleton, look, I'm working with my grandfather. If you're thinking of having a bet today, we'd love you to bet with us. And he goes, oh, yeah, I'll have 10,000 on it at 10 to 1. I was like, oh, terrific. But that was to win 100,000, and we would bet to win a couple of 2,000 or 3,000 maximum. And the horse won, and I was just gutted. I'm like, that's going to take us so long to get back, and ruined our year. And and my grandfather we went down the path working together where we could lose. We lost $2 million one day, and we lost on plenty of days. We lost $1 million, but he was always fantastic when we had losing days. And he just go, that's part of the course. And he goes, you'll grow from that. The fact that you can stomach a $100,000 loss and you're not out of business, as long as you don't go out of business, as long as you can stomach that, you get to a new level where you can't go from being straight off the bat of becoming a bookie to betting into millions of dollars. You have to get that sort of battle scars and understanding of how to play at a higher turnover level. And that was part. He goes, look, you've reached a milestone today. You now can to take a $100,000 bet. You've at least stomached it. And it's true what he was saying. You need to get to that level. For me, when I first started to take a bet to lose $100, $200, I was like, I can't lose $200.
Yeah.
But fast forward 10 years to lose $2 million, you're like, oh, well,
it happens.
I don't want to lose $2 million. I want to win. But ultimately, you sort of get to that stage where the bets, they don't have that sort of impact on you as being nervous. You just do what is the right course of what you should be doing.
Definitely.
With the bets.
Talk to me about the evolution of your business persona. So you went from on track, and what was the next step?
So yeah, I was lucky during university. My dad said, oh, well, you should go and be a bookie at the Dogs and work at all the country meetings, the provincial meetings. And so I had this experience of sort of travelling all around, going to these meetings. And then I worked as a clerk on the other days for my dad, and then my grandfather came out of retirement, and we worked together for 6 years or so. And then we went from being the smallest bookies on course to the largest bookies on course. And then the taxes changed in New South Wales. I moved down to Melbourne and lived in Crown Casino for 4 years, and went from basically couldn't get a stand there for the first little bit to being the biggest bookie in Melbourne and holding more money than all the other bookies combined. And that was really thanks to learnings from my dad and my grandfather, but my dad's form analysis. We had access to Betfair and used Betfair well before the bookmaking market did, and we could offer different products in Victoria than we could in Sydney. So we basically marketed to all the Sydney punters we knew, saying we'll be able to offer you best tote and we can offer you these limits, bet with us. And so the business boomed. And thought, how good's this? I remember standing on the middle of the rails at Flemington and going, I hope I've made it. I've first bookie back from New South Wales since my grandfather 40 years before in 1968. And I thought, if I can just be doing this for the rest of my life, I'm going to be so happy. And then in that year, the iPhone came out, 3G phone connection came out with the internet, the advertising laws got restricted across state lines, and within 1 year, the on-course bookmaking plummeted in turnover. And so then we moved to being a telephone-only bookmaker in an office at Moonee Valley, and that was basically a trading house. We'd say to the sort of half a dozen tough punters, we'll bet you to win 50,000 or 100,000. And what we used to do with their business, we'd take the bet and then we'd trade it off with all the bookmakers. And all the bookies were coming from the UK at the time, and they were happy to bet bigger limits. And then we had sort of 100 or so good customers, and whatever they wanted, 100,000, 500,000, $1 million, whatever they wanted, we'd bet them, but we'd move the market with the tough money and basically trade that money and keep the softer money. And that was a really good business for 2 years, but then the market changed. Those bookies didn't want to take that level of business anymore. and more of our customers moved online, and that's where we started TomWaterhousecom. And TomWaterhousecom went from 100 customers to 250,000 customers in 18 months.
Yeah, wow.
And that was just a massive growth spurt, and luck of timing of the market and changing advertising restrictions, and yeah, it was a really different journey.
That was my first exposure to you, was sitting down on a Friday night watching the footy, and then you'd come on the screen, and that was where I first got to know who you were, and
Yep.
you know, obviously put two and two together. You know, my dad was big in racing, and I heard the Waterhouse name, and then I seen you, and it's then been interesting to follow on as years go to hear your story. But one thing that always stuck out, and Joey and I actually spoke about on the way up here today, is you speak about your time at uni, which I think marketing was a part of that,
Yep.
if I'm correct.
Yeah.
I think you're a genius marketer.
Oh, well, thanks.
I love what you do, because you are so different to the rest of your industry in the way that you market your product and the way that you market yourself.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. Talk to me about your creativity in marketing.
So all the bookmakers in England were named Paddy Power and William Hill and Victor Chandler and Fred Doan, and like they were personalities. And when I went to the track, I used to remember Cole Tidy like as the bookie on track, and then all of these URLs came about: sports bet, sports betting, TAB, sports bet.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, where's the bookie that you're betting with? Where's that personality? And obviously the family has been known in racing. My great-grandfather, grandfather, dad, my mum, her father, horse trainers. The family's very rich background in history in the racing industry, and so we saw that as an advantage, and some of the overseas firms did some studies showing that our awareness as a brand was very high. And I thought, well, why would we brand it as a random URL when we've got a strong brand presence already as a family name, Waterhouse, and also as an individual? And look, I've been on, like, I don't know why they chose me, but I've been on Dancing with the Stars, and we were betting big at the time, and also fresh young face, and my aunt, who she got the university medal in marketing at New South Wales University, and marketing genius, and she very much designed like the brand imagery, and said, look, this look and feel, and worked with a great marketing agency that called Fenton Stevens that came up with a lot of the stuff also, and so she was very much overseeing what that brand image looked like. And we just saw that as an individual, our ability to acquire customers was we were able to acquire them at a much lower cost than those sort of faceless brands, and probably it's accelerated more so now, because back then it was you could build a big company brand through TV, where now people follow individuals, and I think out of the top most 50 followed people things on Instagram or whatever, 49 of them are individuals, you know. So people are following individuals, and so that was a big advantage, and the brand was never really, I don't think it was a polarizing brand up until we did the NRL, and then the NRL really changed it from being just a racing type brand to more broader. People go, oh, that's that guy that's either doing really well, he's young, trying things in betting, or I really don't like that guy, is really annoying, he just ruins my TV coverage, and he's all things betting, which is something that I don't like being fed down my throat. And that really changed the sort of dynamics of the brand, and increased the awareness, but also increased the polarization of it. And it was a really interesting time and journey.
Talk to me about that, the backlash that you get for, especially now where you spoke about it, a lot of brands are personal brands or individuals, and I think a great example of that is, I know there's been discussion around American sport. It's very much based on individual team branding or individual player branding, where some of those players have bigger names than the teams they play for.
Yep.
Major League Baseball lost out because they didn't allow clubs or players to individually brand.
Yeah, it's interesting.
MLB wanted to control the actual branding of the business themselves.
Yep.
And you've seen their business slide because of that. But on the other end of the spectrum, it kind of protects individual integrity, it protects individual emotion, because when you're putting yourself out there, much like I do with all my stuff, you're exposed to, there's not going to be 100% of people that love what you do. How do you stomach that?
Look, we end up selling TomWaterhousecom to William Hill, William Hill bought Sporting Bet and Centrebet and our business. And they asked me sort of 6 months in, would you run those businesses for us? And I'd never been in an executive type role or anything like that before. And then going to be CEO of these 3 businesses as William Hill in Australia was so different in that I wasn't promoting myself as an individual, or I was a corporate executive, as the CEO of a company. And I really enjoyed that period of time in that there wasn't sort of the scrutiny of what's he doing, or of running a business and learning how these big companies operate and stuff. But then I thought, when William Hill sold the business to Stars Group and I was able to get the brand back, I thought, well, look, I don't know how many CEOs there are in Australia, but call it just as a round number there, 5,000, which I have no idea if that's the number, but let's say there's 5,000, and let's say that I was in the top 10% of CEOs, which wouldn't be the case, but let's say I was in the... Well, look, there's still 500 CEOs that are better than me. I've got no really unique advantage like in that space, but I've been blessed in that I've got the background and the heritage and the learnings of my family in this area, and that's a gift. I'm so lucky that I've been born in the family that I have and the background that I've got. Well, why not utilize it and use it and use the brand and embrace it and try and promote it, because that's a unique gift that I've got that I've been so lucky to have and differentiates me from the market. So I sort of went this round thing of, I don't want to be on any publicity. I don't want to have anything to do with being on like TV or media. I just want to chill out with my wife and my kids to actually, well, I've got it back. It's got some value.
Yeah, definitely.
I better promote it and give it a go. And that's, it's not natural. I don't like being in front of a camera or like posting like stuff that I go, I just look like a wanker, but it's marketing and it works. So it's and I'm lucky to be in the position I am. So that's been that's sort of our thinking behind it.
Might I say though, I think it's funny what you said there, because that's the fine line, isn't it, between how do I come across? Does it look, like you said, maybe like a little bit wankerish? But I think you do it really well, because I think a lot of your audience and a lot of the people that are coming to bet with you, especially now with what you're doing, it's really a working class society. But I think you actually allow yourself to have a little bit of fun with it, which actually connects with the audience. I don't know if people
real, but we're just taking the piss really most of the time.
100%.
But you're always going to have people that, when you put yourself out there, that are not going to like it, or they might like it. But I don't really think about it. I don't sort of... it doesn't... If people don't like me or like me, it doesn't really make me happy or sad. As long as my wife and kids and my family are happy with me and love me, I'm happy. And also if the business is going well, I love business, and I probably, from my parents' work ethic, my mum gets up at like 2:05 every morning. My dad gets up at 3:00 in the morning. Like, they have no, from a financial sense, need to work as hard as they do, but they non-stop work, and they love business. And my aunt's the same. She works every day of the week, and my sister's like mum and got a great career. Like the whole family just is hard workers, and I just love coming to work every day and business. So if that's growing and going well, and my family are happy, and then the rest I don't even think about.
I sense that with you. I sense there's two really strong characteristics to your nature. The first is that competitive drive to continue to push yourself and to grow and to get better and better. And we sort of heard it there. You said you identify what your strengths and weaknesses are, and you work towards making sure that you continue to strengthen you and your brand. But also you've got a huge resilience. And we speak about those early on-track days, stomaching those losses, the on-track business dying, you're moving to telephone and then to the internet. You understand what it takes to succeed in business, and that's a rare trait.
Well, you sort of, you're in the wrong business of putting yourself out there and being in business if you can't stomach it, because it's a different, there's so many, being in a corporate environment, there's so many advantages with working for a big organisation. And there's disadvantages also, but there's huge advantages of running your own business, but at the same time you've got to be able to stomach the downside of it. And that's why it's not clear. If someone said to me, should I be an entrepreneur or should I work as an executive in a corporate environment, I have no idea what that answer is. I only know what it is for me, you know, and that's because it's different for everybody.
Talk to me about the decision to sell TomWaterhouse.com in the first instance to William Hill.
Yeah.
Was that a hard decision to make because it's a brand you've built? And also, what was the reasoning behind making that decision?
Look, the plan was never to sell TomWaterhouse.com, but it grew so fast and the market changed so quickly. So the taxes went dramatically up and the competition. So you had the likes of Ladbrokes and Bet365 and like BetEasy came into the market. Your PointsBet later on came into the market. You had big business like SportingBet and CentreBet get absorbed by William Hill. Everything was consolidating and the tax environment went up from, like, if you bet $100 when we first started bookmaking, we'd pay couple of dollars in tax if you're in the Northern Territory. Now, if you lose $100, you pay $40 or $43 in product fees and point of consumption tax. So you're $43, and then you've got $57 that you've got to then pay your marketing expenses, IT expenses, everything else, and then you pay your company tax, and then that's your profit. And for instance, William Hill had broadly $200 million in expenses. We had 170 IT developers. Like, it was for an Australian business that had big expenses, and TomWaterhouse.com went from a startup with 3 people, and one of them was me, one of them was my wife and another person, to being 110 people and 100 clients to begin with and 250,000 clients. There was just huge lift up in growth, and so we needed to keep up, and we needed to find a partner. And William Hill, it was a sale process which I thought took forever, like 9 months. They're like, oh, that was so quick. But we were so lucky and so blessed to have that time, not only selling, having a great outcome of building a business and selling it within a 2-year period, to finding a business that I could ultimately then run here in Australia, and seeing how a multinational listed big company operates. And the Australian business had offices in Tel Aviv, Manila, New Zealand, Brisbane, Melbourne, Darwin, Sydney.
Yeah, wow.
Plus, we could get all the learnings and insights from the global group, which were in we're in London and Gibraltar and many different other places. And to see how that big organisation globally could work and learn from that was an amazing experience. And then to be able to buy the brand back, I would never have dreamt that could happen when we sold it. So it was I sort of think of it like going back to university for 4 years in many ways, because you always think as whether it's from a family business or a startup or entrepreneurial, what are these big companies? How do they operate? How would I ever work with them or sell to them or partner with them? They're big beasts and much slower in moving and they have huge strengths and also weaknesses. And I got to see that and spend time in it. I really enjoyed it. And,
that's awesome.
And thankful to have that time.
Talk to me about when you get the brand back. What's the change? What's the thought process that you go through where you say, okay, there's reasons we sold out before. What moves do we make in the market now to be different?
Yep.
And to come out on top again?
So the thinking behind that was I got the brand back on the condition that I didn't do any betting for 2 years. I wasn't allowed to take any bets. And so I thought, well, what should I use the TomWaterhouse.com brand for? And William Hill and TomWaterhouse.com and through my time bookmaking, I've seen well over 1 million customers, and only a very small proportion, 10 or 12, that actually are full-time punters that win consistently. That's not to say that that's the only people in the market. That's just all that I've seen in the market. The majority of people that bet regularly, they don't win. You know, it's an entertainment. It's they're just enjoying it because they like to watch the footy and they hope they win, but over the year, if they bet every week, they're not going to win. And I thought, well, I grew up with my dad, who's a form genius and bets all around the world and is a real statistical master of working out true probability and being able to bet. And I grew up listening to him and his friends who are winners. And I thought, well, it's not that hard to win, but no one wins. So how can I sort of try and teach them the lessons my dad taught me? And the whole thing was to try and make our members better bettors. And I thought, well, if I can just get 100 customers that are paying me a weekly fee, I can keep the brand going, and then in 2 years' time, I'll go back into betting. And we just used Squarespace and some automated tools. Me and a friend of mine, and put the site up the afternoon that I sort of was able to be not with William Hill anymore, and launched it. And the next day someone wrote a newspaper article saying, oh, Tom's selling tips and thinks people are going to buy these packages and that. And we got a few hundred customers on that first day. And I thought, gosh, well, maybe this is something. And it's turned out to be really good in that basically there's 3 ingredients to winning on the punt. And the first is you've got to do the form and analysis to work out what is the true probability, or the true probability compared to the market.
Yeah.
You've then got to work out how much you're going to have, so how confident you are on taking that selection. And then you've got to get on at the top of the market. It's like buying stocks at the bottom of the market. You've got to get on your selection, whether it's a football team or a horse. You've got to bet at the very top price, so you've got the least amount of percentage against you. And no one really thinks about that or goes, oh, that sounds a bit tricky. But we tried to make it as simple as possible and say, look, here's the selection, here's how much to have on it, and here are the bookies that are offering the prices that you should be taking. Follow these steps and you'll become better at betting. You'll hopefully win. Our packages, if you followed them, have had tremendous success. But most people,
I've read that.
Most people don't have the discipline to stick to it. But because I'm just literally copying and giving them the lessons my dad showed me, and it's turned out to be really popular and been terrific. And then the next step was, well, how do I take that? And I've shown them how we bet, but they're like, I only have an account with Sportsbet or the Tab or BetEasy, or I don't have accounts with all these bookies you're listing to get the best price. And I thought, well, it's painful for them because they don't want to have to open up 20 accounts. They don't want to have to deposit money with all of them, and it's just painful for them to actually get on at the best price, which is so important to winning. And so I thought, well, how can I create something for them that makes it really easy? And so we sort of had this vision that we wanted to create within our app, an odds comparison site like a bookings.com or Trivago or something like that allowed them to get our tips and in 2 clicks place a bet at the best price. And we saw that Dynamic Odds, that's owned by the BetMakers, a listed company here in Australia, had this technology, an odds comparison site. And we said to them, well, look, how can we partner with you to create inside our app a really seamless experience for our large database of members? And been working on that with them for a long time now, and released just a few weeks ago in the Tom Waterhouse app this ability that you can not only get our tips, but for any horse race or dog race or trot race, click and see a whole variety of bookies and have the same username and password to sign up with all of them, and bet seamlessly in 2 clicks and hopefully get on at the top price. And
that's actually, that's really good. Smart idea.
Hopefully it works. I think it'll be really popular because, well, I use this example quite a bit. I always think with petrol stations, I always want to go to the lowest cost petrol station, but I've never driven to another suburb to put petrol in my car.
Yeah.
But if they were both next to each other, I'd always go to the low cost one.
Yeah.
But I just go, this is the one I go to on the way home, and it's there and I'm used to it.
Yeah.
But I'm paying more for petrol every day. And I sort of think to people, if they had the choice of all the bookies there, well, why wouldn't they take $2.20 in rather than $2.10 or $2?
Yeah.
But if they've got their money with an account and they only use that one app, well,
it's convenience.
It's convenience.
So to all the lads and ladies that asked for the business, what goes on and how to make sure those punts are right, you heard it there. Get on the system. It's funny because we had a chat on the way up here today. So we're in training at the moment. So we're doing a 42K in December.
Gosh.
A run for cystic fibrosis. So I've got cystic fibrosis and I wanted to spearhead an event. And last night I ran the longest I've ever run, 7.5 Ks. Never run more than that in my life. It was 5 Ks before that.
Yep.
I got 42 to do in December. I can't afford to step a foot wrong.
Yeah.
I can't afford to, veer off the program. I can't afford to go in the wrong direction because it's going to send me backwards.
Yeah.
And we spoke about sticking to the program.
Yeah.
The professional's given me the program. Benny Seymour, big shout out to the legend there at BFit. He's given me the program and I've got to stick to it.
Yeah.
So how do you communicate that to your members? Because I've seen you talk about it in that podcast before. It's not necessarily what the social punter will get behind, because the social punter doesn't win.
Yeah.
He wins one multi, he loses the next 10. But to make sure that you bet to the system, it's about not a bet-to-bet win, but it's about a monthly win, isn't it?
Yeah, I think in life, whether it's in sport or in business or investing or in betting, discipline is probably the most important factor, because like whether it's controlling like how much you drink or how much you eat or how much you spend, or you've got to have discipline, and that's the same with punting. You can win betting, but it requires probably more important than those three ingredients of doing the form, the staking, getting on the best price. It's the discipline of actually following that, and some people have it and other people don't. And that's okay. I don't have discipline in most things I do in life. Just in this area of my life, I have discipline, and it's.
Talk to me about the emotion behind having mum as a trainer, and you've got a bet that you like, but then you got her horse there, and you're like, oh, how hard is it to back against mum when mum comes home for dinner and says, I really like this week, and you go, I don't know if I like it as much as I like this.
Look, it's not really hard in that we just think about it from a pure business point of view.
Yeah.
In that my mum or Gaze, she thinks that all the horses are going to win, and they generally all lead. But trainers don't have. There's some amazing trainers out there. Like you look at the likes of Gay and the other Hall of Fame trainers. They're amazing. Like and what they've been able to achieve and what they do. But they've got very little idea of how the other horses are going and how the form lines up from all different areas and different trainers and preparation of what they're doing. They're not making their living through punting, which is a completely different skill set. And so our ability to analyse form, and really what my dad does is being able to analyse form and take form from all different areas and hundreds of factors and put it into a model to spit out what he sees as the true probability, is far more accurate than what a trainer will tell you about, oh, my horse was great today, because they aren't across all the different factors that come into working out that probability. So she'd be far more inclined to ask my dad, oh, just my horse got a chance today, even though he hasn't seen any track work, than he would ever ask, or I would ever ask what she thinks, because not that we don't think she's an amazing trainer, she's the best. Like she's trained more Group 1s than any living Australian trainer. She's
definitely
incredible. But would I want to get her tips? Leave me out of it. I'll get my dad's tips every time.
Talk to me about racing moments. We've all got those, this is something you're extremely passionate about. We've all got those moments from our passions in life that we look back on and remember fondly. It may be a moment that taught you a lesson. It may be a moment that you just look back on and puts a smile on your face. What are those top racing moments for you?
Look, I think it's probably Gay winning the Melbourne Cup with Fiorante.
Yeah.
In that I'd never gone to the Melbourne Cup as a spectator and never had a day out of the races, but we just sold the company to William Hill, and I wasn't running William Hill at the time yet, so I was basically footloose and fancy free, and went down to Melbourne to watch the Melbourne Cup, and I backed Fiorante at the call of the card. My dad also loved the horse. He had a mark 6-4. It was like a 6-1 chance. Or he had a mark $2.50. It was a $7 chance. And for Gay to win her first Melbourne Cup, and to have the whole family, my aunt and uncle, my sister and her husband Luke, and my wife, and it was just an amazing having my mum and dad there. We never all been at the races before, and to be able to enjoy it and to win, that was just a huge thing for mum, because she's won all the big races except for the Melbourne Cup, and just to see her joy, and my dad found the horse, I think, for her in the UK. So
oh, wow,
to have
special.
that real family connection, and it was just an amazing moment.
It's funny you say that, because I read an article yesterday when I was doing a bit of pre-research, and it was talking about, I think it was talking about when you'd sold to William Hill, and it mentioned in that mum's race coming up, Gay's race coming up, the Melbourne Cup, and her chasing that first winner, and it mentioned Fiorante, and I thought it's funny looking back on that now, knowing what we know. Yeah. But it's cool to see, and it's always nice. You look back on those moments, and it drives your passion. Yeah, it's
great. Racing is an amazing game, because you have those highs and lows. Like I've from whether it's losing a fortune on a race to winning big on a race, or I've seen, I don't know how she does it. She has the favourite for a big race, and all the owners expect her to win it, and then it doesn't win, and then you win the race. It's highs and lows, but that's what makes it
definitely
so much fun.
Who's Tom Waterhouse outside of this office and outside of racing? I know this is what you live and breathe, but is there another side to you that we don't get to see?
To me, I think people, like, you have different periods of your life, but for me now, I just love spending time with my wife and my kids and working hard. You know, it's I sort of we've got these 3 businesses that we've got. Obviously, the subscription, the tipping business. We've got this fund business, the Waterhouse VC Fund, which is a wholesale fund that invests in gambling, mainly listed gambling companies, and then we've got this odds comparison business through the Tom Waterhouse app. So I'm so busy and excited by those ventures and hopefully growing them to be sizable, really good businesses. And my kids are young and in that beautiful time, you know, like 7, my daughter's 7 and my son's 4 and my youngest daughter's 2, and they're just at that really cute, fun age, and my wife and I just loving that period of our life, you know.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. Talk to me about, I'm always interested to speak to successful business people and understand what anchors them and those little daily rituals that you do every day that when you don't, you notice it. You notice that decrease in performance or the way that you feel. Is there anything for you that has become consistency in your routine and in your life that allows you to perform at your best and make sharp, intelligent decisions?
Well, the only thing that's routine is I drive my daughter to school every day, which is just the most beautiful, fun time because it's just a great sort of don't think about anything else, no calls and business-wise, but I'm sort of the same routine person. Like my wife thinks I'm so boring because I basically eat the same thing. We go to the same restaurant every week without fail. Like we eat similar time, but I'm at the office at the same time. I'm pretty boring in that way. But yeah, I don't have one specific ritual because I basically do the same thing all the time. I'm in the office 7 days a week. You know, I bring on my kids on Sunday here. They draw on the whiteboard, and we could make a day of coming into here and then do something else. Just because I found it, my parents have given me so much as growing up, but one of the things that they really gave me that I'm so happy for is that discipline and work ethic. To see them work 7 days a week, it was just natural. Why wouldn't you do that? Because I saw how hard they worked, and I love that with my kids. I bring them in here and I try and show them stuff, or I talk about like boring business stuff with them, because even though they look at me and they're like, why are you telling me this story? And even halfway through, I'm like, why am I telling my 4-year-old son this story? But I sort of think that my parents did that with me and got me interested in it, you know?
Definitely. You said you drive your daughter to school every day.
Yeah.
I've seen you got a nice little collection of automobiles.
She goes to, my car is a 2-seater and annoying doors in that they sort of go up in this rather than out, and it's I think she goes like, Dad, when can you just drive me in a normal like sort of family car? But I just like that particular car, and probably my next car should be a family wagon.
What's the favourite car at the moment?
I always I've had the same car, the SLS, that Gullwing, for 10 years, and I hope I never sell it. I hope I keep it just because...
It's a Merc, isn't it?
Yeah, and just because it's I just like it. It's nice to drive and fun and also comfortable.
Got a feel to it.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, you spoke a little bit about your daily routine being really consistent. There's obviously an element to your business now where a lot of it is about, like you said, reading and studying that form and something you've learned from your father. How often are you doing that, and where does that play a part in your day to make sure that those best bets are consistently ready to go and you're happy with them? Yeah,
so that's just part of... So it's really splitting up the business in the 3 of how can we... firstly, what's happening in the gambling space, because we're obviously investing in different gambling companies, but also form for the next day. Obviously, it takes a lot longer to do the form for a Saturday than it does on Monday, because we're coming out with 1 selection compared to, let's say, 30 selections on a Saturday. And then the rest of the time is really working with the guys that have built the odds comparison side of how do we make this more user-friendly and how do we market it. And that's really what each day is made up of.
That's nice. It sounds like you've got a good mix and balance in your business now.
And also focused in the one area I know. I know betting, you know. I know I don't try and venture into other spaces, and I don't run a mining fund, you know. I don't run a banking fund or something. I just focus on the one area that I know and I've spent my whole life in, you know. That
interests me. Has that always been the case, or has there ever been, I guess, that intrigue to maybe step into something new, to try something different, and not to exactly leave racing, but to dabble in other areas of business?
So the areas that of the core, there's little offshoots. So like whether it's through technology or gambling is one of the industries that sort of are quite early adopters in a space, and so that's given us offshoots. But to me, I always try and stick to the core of area, in that there's not many people in the world that have been lucky enough to have the background I've had in gambling and in betting, and also gone from family business to on-course bookie to startup technology business to running a large big corporate here to back into start. Like, it's always been in that area, so I basically just want to stick to my strength and focus on that. And look, there's definitely interest in other areas, and I like reading about them, but I don't want to. I go into something else and I'll never have the same advantage that I've got in this space. So I just really want to focus and stick to what I know and hopefully make a success of it.
That's good to hear. There's a couple of questions I want to ask you before we let you get back to your busy schedule. First thing is, are you much of a reader?
Yeah, my wife and I, just probably shows the different stages of our life. We probably after we put the kids to bed and I don't know, put stuff away and got ready, maybe would read for half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour each night. And obviously when you're on holidays you can read a lot more, but try and read as many books that are obviously it's different to reading when you're at work, when you're reading articles or stuff on your phone. I just love that time of having your phone away and just being able to get into a good book and enjoy, and just it lets you freeze your mind to think, and also a very nice way to finish your day and before bed. So I don't know if that is a lot, but I try and get through quite a few books every year. And
is there a favourite book?
I like fiction-wise. I liked The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. Rand, I think that's how you pronounce it. I thought that was really good. And business book. Look, I found all those books, Think and Grow Rich and these type of self-help books. They were really helpful and good. And but I don't have one particular. There's bits out of things like, that's really relevant to where I am at the moment, or it's just different time. And when I was running William Hill, I looked at the books I read through that time. They were far more how to be a better corporate executive and how to do this. And then in another time, it's far more entrepreneurial type sort of books. And I don't know, there's good bits to be getting from all of them. But those tried and true, older books, like that book, that was pretty good. And a lot of them have sort of filtered off from those messages in that book. So, probably not one particular that I go, that's amazing.
See, for me, I'm trying to get into the habit of reading. I'm a real listener. I love to listen, but I find it hard to sit and focus and read. So I've got a favourite book because it's the only one I've read since I left school, The Alchemist.
The Alchemist.
It's actually a great book. Have you ever read it?
No, I haven't read The Alchemist. Good.
A lot of people speak about it. Kobe Bryant was his favourite book. It's a real it's a fictional book that's got kind of an underlying value to the book about following what you're passionate about, or happy, what gives you happiness, and kind of how life brings you back to that. No matter what journey or course you take. Really good book. I just got to start reading more now.
It's just a different time of your life, isn't it?
100%.
It's when I was your age, I never read any books. I'd be out, if I wasn't working, I'd be out at nightclubs and partying and doing whatever I possibly could to, but just different time, and our kids are young, 7, 4 and 2, so they're in bed at 8 o'clock or 7:30, or you've got to be there with your kids. You can't be out every night, otherwise, who's going to be there looking after your children, and so it's just a different time in your life, and yeah, got to enjoy every bit of it, like different pros and cons for each period.
Definitely. Well, look, it's been absolutely incredible hearing your story. I love to see anyone in life be successful, and Joe and I spoke about it on the way up here today. This is what I love about this job. I get to meet people, I get to create a connection with new people all the time and learn something. But more importantly, it's really satisfying for me to go away from here today and know that we got this amazing episode. But I've also met a good human, and I can see you've got a genuine and really nice nature. So I
appreciate it.
I thank you so much for having us. I want to make sure that everyone that's listening to this episode, I think we've got a real demographic that would actually really love and get a lot of use out of your products.
Yeah. Where
can people find you, and where can they access those services?
The tipping is tomwaterhouse.com, and for the odds comparison site is just the Tom Waterhouse app in the App Store, or if you've got Google, then you can just download the app from Google Play Store.
Amazing. And you're on Instagram too, just Waterhouse Tom, is it?
Yeah, Waterhouse_Tom, I think, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tom Waterhouse, thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Yeah,
appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
So